G'day everyone, Chris from Primac Sports with the Round 8 Super Rugby preview. Cracking round of rugby behind us, seeing the Reds chalk their first win. The Chiefs eked out a win on Friday night against the Blues, and the Crusaders nearly got run down by the Force but managed to score a late try to get the points there. Certainly a cracking weekend of rugby behind us and hopefully another one ahead. There's some bumper matchups including the Aussie derby between the Brumbies and the Cheetahs, and also the big clash between the two sides that are sitting at the top of each of the South African pools, the Lions hosting the Stormers. But let's get into the previews. Well, first up we've got the Crusaders hosting the Jaguars there at AMI Stadium in Christchurch Friday night, 5:30 Australian Eastern Time. Jaguars really struggling to live up to expectations and certainly had a few players moved on through lack of form and injury so far this season. But when you've got the international players of the likes of Landeo, Nicolas Sanchez, Augustin Creevy running through your lineup, you certainly need to be performing better than having one win from their 6 outings so far, and they certainly need to start turning that around. I mean, if they don't get more than sort of 5 or 6 wins this season, it's certainly going to be considered a fairly significant failure. Crusaders, on the other hand, they're in pretty good form. Managed to get out of jail thanks to a late converted try, with Moanga knocking over the conversion late to get it done. They've certainly got an all-star backline, and I think that all-star backline with names like Moanga, Crotty, Namani Nandola and the like are really going to do a job this weekend against the Jaguares. I'm going to be leading the Crusaders 13 plus here at home in the first match of the round. Alright, next up we've got the Rebels hosting the Hurricanes Friday night, 7:45pm, Amy Park in Melbourne there. The Rebels, they've certainly been reasonably impressive so far this year. They sit equal top of the Australian Conference on competition points. They've certainly given some bigger name teams some worries and have taken some scalps, including that of the Waratahs in their last outing 2 weeks ago. Hurricanes, on the other hand, they've been pretty strong. In saying that, they are sitting in an ultra-competitive New Zealand conference. They're running 4th in that at the moment, which sees them holding on to the 3rd of the Australian-New Zealand wildcard spots by the absolute skin of their teeth, and they'll be looking to continue to build and ensuring they fend off the likes of the Rebels for that spot there. I think the Hurricanes are probably going to be a little bit too strong here. The Rebels certainly improving. Whether they can mix it with them even though it's at home, I'm not too sure. I think they'll stay within arm's length but just not quite get it done. I think the Hurricanes will have the backline prowess to take them down, and so I'm tipping the Hurricanes to win this one 1-12. Next up, Saturday 3am, the Cheetahs hosting the Sunwolves. That one's coming to you from Toyota Stadium in Bloemfontein. Both sides here struggling. The Cheetahs only one win so far, and that was by 1 point against the Sunwolves about 5 weeks ago in Singapore. Sunwolves have certainly improved and gelled a bit since then, but they're looking really travel weary. Their 3rd away game in a row here. I just really can't see them getting into the battle too much with the Cheetahs here. I think the Cheetahs, a few of their outside backs and loose falls will really start to tear the Sunwolves apart late in the game as fatigue kicks in. Because of that, I'm certainly going to be leaning to the Cheetahs, and I think I'll be taking them 13 plus in this one. Alright, next up the Blues and the Sharks, 5:30pm Australian Eastern Time on Saturday, coming to you from Eden Park in Auckland, the spiritual home of New Zealand rugby. Well, what to say about these two teams? The Blues, look, they did stay in the battle with the Chiefs last week, but I think that was more through poor management through the Chiefs rather than great form by the Blues. I know I sound like a broken record, but they are relying way too heavily on Ohio West. You've got names like Jerome Kano and Renee Ranger with years and years of experience and plenty of caps behind them. They really need to step up and start taking some of the load as well. I have been impressed with young Blake Gibson on the side of the scrum there for the Blues. He's been doing pretty well, but he's showing his inexperience in patches. The Sharks, on the other hand, similar story. So many stars in their lineup, and they just can't get it done. They were comprehensively beaten by the Lions on the weekend to cough up top spot in Africa too, and they need to turn that around a little. I mean, when you've got a team with names like Willie LaRue, Joe Peterson, the likes of that, the Oosthuizens, too many top-line players to be dropping results in the way they are at the moment. They've certainly got to turn that slump around, and I think it's going to start this weekend. I look for them to bounce back after a sore and sorry couple of weeks, and I think they'll take the Blues here into Auckland 1-12. Straight off the back of that one, we've got the Australian derby I alluded to earlier. The Waratahs hosting the Brumbies, 7:45 Australian Eastern Standard Time at Allianz Stadium in Sydney. Well, what can we say about the Tars? I certainly don't think they've lived up to even the team they've got on paper under the reign of Daryl Gibson. It's not to say it's a reflection on Daryl as a coach. I just think he's really struggling to step out of Michael Checker's shadow. Certainly some star players there, the likes of, your Israel Folau's, Michael Hooper's. You've got these guys as well as some guys that are, a bit newer, a bit fresher to the game that are really starting to step up, like your Carraras, etc. I've been really impressed with some moments and some patches of their games, and they've done well to hang into matches like their Highlanders match and then coming back late against the Rebels last week. Similarly, they're lucky to get away with some of their wins like those against the Reds. The Brumbies, on the other hand, absolutely started like a house on fire, blew away some of the big-name sides in the early weeks before starting to come crashing back to earth. The last 2 matches have resulted in 20-point losses, admittedly to probably the 2 form teams of the competition in the Stormers over there in South Africa, and then the Chiefs at home. They really need to turn things around. They're missing their talismanic leader, David Pocock, after he's been suspended. I really think they'll miss Poey. Because of him being out, I'm certainly going to lean to this one being a little bit tighter match, and I think I'll take the Brumbies 1-12 here. Second last match of the round, the Bulls hosting the Reds at Loftus Versfeld in Pretoria. The Bulls, well, they've certainly been impressive in their results recently. Probably would have liked to have got across the stripe a couple more times in their dismantling of the Kings last week, but we'll take some pride out of the fact they were the first side this season to manage to hold the Kings trialists. So that's certainly a positive stat against a side in the Kings that do offer some attacking prowess. So the Bulls, they've been in pretty good form. They're sitting right up there and right amongst the finals contentions as we go forward. The Reds, on the other hand, they managed to break their duck finally after they welcomed back captain James Slipper. They got it done by 1 point against the Highlanders and have been making a real season of having some tight games so far. Certainly impressed with Carmichael Hunt again at the back there, and their 9 and 10 are really starting to gel, so it's looking like a positive for the Reds going forward. The Reds will be looking and hoping for back-to-back wins here. I just think it's going to be a task too far. I'd like to think the Bulls are going to bring them crashing back to earth at home, and I'll be leaning the Bulls 13 plus in this matchup. The last match of the round sees the Lions hosting the Stormers. Emirates Airline Park, 3:15 a.m. Australian Eastern Time on Sunday morning. Should be a cracker of a clash as the number 1 side in the Africa 1 and number 1 in the Africa 2 conferences take on each other. The Lions, they've been impressive in recent weeks. Absolutely hammered the Sharks last week in a bit of an upset. Fly half Elton Yankees is really coming into his own, and I expect to see him come into calculations for the South African Springbok side for the Rugby Championships if he continues his form. He's certainly gelling the side and taking them around the park. The Stormers, on the other hand, they've been really impressive. They're loose forwards and back row leading the way for them in a lot of the contests, and I've certainly been impressed with what they've put on the park so far. They certainly took the Sunwolves to task last week, but similar to the Bulls before them, probably would have liked to put more points against a travelling weak side. I expect this one to really come down to a battle of the back rows and loose forwards, and I think Schalkberger will lead it and take on the number 8 battle against Warren Wiley, 2 very experienced campaigners. I think Schalk will get a points battle there and certainly get it done, leading the Stormers home to a 1-12 victory on the road here.